Welcome to Kanerika's podcast, The Digital Shift. Imagine you are a compliance officer at JP Morgan Chase. You used to spend, 40 hours a week just staring at spreadsheets.
Oh yeah, cross-referencing endless international databases, just a nightmare.
Exactly. You're looking for like a single money laundering red flag hidden in an absolute mountain of data.
Right?
But today, you log in on Monday morning, and a digital teammate has already scanned 1 million transactions. It flagged the 3 accounts you actually need to worry about.
Yeah.
And it even drafted the preliminary compliance reports for your review.
It's wild to think about.
It really is. And that's why today we are doing a deep dive into a transition in technology that is happening so incredibly fast, it's fundamentally rewiring how businesses operate.
Absolutely.
We are moving away from traditional reactive AI and stepping into the era of agentic AI. These are systems that can think, plan, and act completely autonomously.
Which is a huge leap.
So our mission today is to understand this massive impact, cover the top companies that are leading this revolution, and really learn how this technology changes the way you work.
I love it. Let's get into it.
And just to put a pin in the scale of this, listen to this projection. The global agentic AI market is set to skyrocket from $7.38 billion in 2025 to $47 billion by 2030.
Wow.
Yeah, that is a massive 44.8% compound annual growth rate.
That kind of hypergrowth tells you we are way past, theoretical white papers.
Definitely.
We're into hard operational reality. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella recently stated, quote, AI agents are replacing segments of knowledge work.
Replacing.
Right, replacing. He didn't say assisting. He said replacing segments. The JP Morgan Chase scenario you just described, that isn't a pilot program launching next year.
It's happening right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are actively deploying these compliance AI agents right now to handle their know your customer and anti-money laundering processes.
That's huge.
It is a seismic shift in how we handle heavily regulated, highly complex work, because it shifts the burden of raw data synthesis from the human to the machine.
Letting people actually do human work.
Precisely. It allows human officers to step out of the data mines and focus purely on high-level, nuanced investigations.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it is really important to understand why we are seeing a $47 billion market projection. We aren't just talking about like a faster server or a better algorithm.
No, not at all.
The market is exploding because the fundamental nature of the technology has changed from an obedient tool to an autonomous actor. Like traditional AI is like a highly advanced calculator, right? You still have to punch in the exact equation.
All right, you have to know the formula.
Exactly. But agentic AI is like hiring an intern who knows the goal, figures out the steps, and just gets it done.
That's a great analogy. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this architectural difference is exactly why enterprise adoption is accelerating at this crazy 44% clip.
Yeah.
Traditional models, they just wait for a prompt. They are entirely reactive. But agentic systems utilize a loop of reasoning and acting.
Meaning they kind of talk to themselves.
Essentially, yeah. They assess the context of a live situation, set their own intermediate objectives, and then execute actions across external systems to achieve the final goal. The AI acts as its own user.
Oh, wow.
It tries a solution, observes the result, realizes it made an error, and corrects its own path before ever showing you the final output.
So it's not bothering you with every little hiccup.
Exactly. It moves businesses from a reactive support model to a proactive, outcome-driven model of execution.
Which naturally leads us to the architects behind this shift. I mean, since agentic AI acts like a digital teammate who is actually building these teammates.
That's the big question.
Right, because creating a system that can independently reason and act is incredibly complex. So let's start by looking at the major players creating these foundational layers.
Yeah, the big 3. And the foundational layer really starts with OpenAI. Right, we already know they set the global benchmark with their GPT models. But the critical evolution here is how those models are now being structurally deployed as intelligent digital agents.
Agents that can actually execute multi-step workflows.
Exactly. They are using advanced API integrations to bridge the gap between thinking and doing. When you give an OpenAI agent a complex instruction, it breaks the task down into a logical sequence.
Like writing a to-do list.
Yep. And then it translates those steps into code, sends a payload of data to an external tool, like a corporate database, retrieves the answer, and incorporates that new data into its next step. It's human-like reasoning applied directly to digital execution.
But reasoning in a vacuum is one thing, right? Taking those massive underlying models and applying them to massive corporate networks is another. That is where Microsoft is stepping in.
Oh, absolutely. They are focusing aggressively on enterprise transformation.
Right, with Copilot.
With Copilot acting as a real-time assistant, sure, but their Autogen framework completely changes the dynamic. Autogen enables multi-agent collaboration. You don't just have one AI agent trying to do everything. You have a whole team of specialized agents.
Like a digital department.
Exactly. One agent writes code, another agent reviews it for errors, and a third agent executes it. They communicate with each other and divide up the labor. And because it sits on Azure AI Studio, it has the scale required by massive global enterprises.
But wait, if you have a dozen autonomous agents talking to each other and writing code, how do they not just, trip over each other or get stuck in some endless loop of arguing over a task?
Good question. They avoid that through strict hierarchical prompting and defined operational boundaries.
There's a boss.
Basically, one agent acts as the project manager holding the ultimate objective, while the others act as narrow executioners.
Makes sense.
But you hit on a limitation of early models. They were mostly blind. They relied purely on text and code.
Right.
So what happens when a workflow requires looking at a complex visual chart or understanding the layout of a proprietary software interface? That is where Google DeepMind stepped in.
Leading the charge in cognitive AI with their Gemini models. Because Gemini doesn't just read. It processes information multimodally.
Right. It natively processes text, code, visual data, and audio in the same neural network.
All at once.
Exactly. When an agentic system can visually see an interface, interpret a scanned invoice, and read the accompanying email context simultaneously, its ability to plan goal-oriented tasks becomes vastly more sophisticated.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. If the biggest tech giants in the world are offering these massive foundational models that can do all this, look at images, write code, execute multi-step plans, how do companies keep their AI deployments from becoming chaotic?
Yeah, the safety concern is massive.
Are these big models actually safe enough out of the box for heavily regulated industries, like banking or healthcare?
Out of the box, absolutely not.
Okay, good to know.
Raw foundational models optimize for answering the prompt, not necessarily for regulatory compliance, and that tension is driving the next layer of innovation pioneered by Anthropic. They created an architectural approach called constitutional AI. Instead of just hoping the model behaves safely, Anthropic essentially hard-coded a constitution into the Claude model's training loop.
A constitution.
Yeah.
So it has its own laws it has to follow.
Precisely. Before it outputs a decision or takes an action, the system evaluates its own planned response against a strict set of written rules.
Rules about safety, bias, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It literally grades its own homework during the inference phase. By embedding these ethical and safety guidelines directly into the core mechanics, Anthropic provides the ethical safeguard that compliance-driven sectors demand.
So it's not just finding the fastest path, but the safest one.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So we have the giants providing the massive cognitive engine and the safety guardrails. But an enterprise rarely has generic, high-level problems.
Right. Usually it's highly specific.
Yeah, complex and, frankly, boring workflows.
Yeah.
And that necessity has birthed this wave of specialist companies.
The masters of the niche.
Exactly. Cognition Labs is a perfect example with their creation, Devin. Devin is billed as the world's first autonomous AI software engineer.
And this isn't an autocomplete tool.
No. It reads a brief, opens its own secure terminal, writes the code, runs tests, reads the error logs when the code inevitably breaks.
Which it always does.
Right. Then it debugs itself and deploys the application independently.
The mechanism driving Devin is a masterpiece of constrained self-reflection. It bridges the gap between natural language understanding and complex software engineering.
Because it operates in a sandbox.
Right, a sandbox where it can safely fail fast and iterate without human intervention. But software engineering is just one niche. Look at Adept AI and their ACT1 model.
Oh, this one is wild.
Adept focuses entirely on software task automation by interacting with user interfaces visually.
So it's looking at the screen.
It looks at the screen, interprets the layout, and literally clicks, types, and navigates across CRMs and web forms exactly like a human operator sitting at a desk.
It's like a helpful ghost in the machine. But wait, Adept AI physically takes over your mouse and keyboard to do the boring data entry. That sounds kind of terrifying from a security perspective.
Oh, it is.
What happens if it misinterprets a visual cue and clicks delete on a massive client database instead of save.
That is the exact fear every CIO has when hearing about this. But Adept mitigates this by requiring explicit human-in-the-loop confirmation for destructive actions.
Okay, phew.
Yeah, and by operating within highly constrained, permissioned environments, it doesn't have the authority to bypass your database's fundamental access controls.
Right. And moving to another specialized application, think about how we gather information. Perplexity AI, with their Comet system.
They are transforming web exploration.
Yeah, because instead of giving you 10 blue links to read, it acts as a research agent. It reads the links, cross-references facts in real time, and synthesizes a verified research report for you.
It fundamentally changes the user experience from search to answer. But what if an organization wants to deploy these kinds of specialized workflows, but they don't have 50 machine learning engineers on staff?
Right, most companies don't.
That is where companies like Strave come in. They built the LLM Foundry, which is a no-code platform.
Oh, nice.
It allows enterprises to launch custom AI agents for document and data processing in a matter of days.
Okay, but having a helpful ghost in the machine is incredible. But how do you safely connect these autonomous agents to your most sensitive corporate data without causing a disaster?
That's the tricky part.
Like, you know that feeling when you're stuck migrating data between two legacy systems that refuse to talk to each other? That's exactly where an agent steps in. But how do you let an AI loose in your internal network without breaking every compliance rule on the books?
It's a massive challenge.
And that is exactly where we step in. We at Kanerika specialize precisely in this challenge, embedding agentic AI securely into enterprise data ecosystems.
Yes. We build the systems that clean, connect, and analyze data across complex hybrid cloud environments autonomously.
Because we aren't just building the brain, right?
No, we are building the secure, compliant nervous system that connects that brain to the rest of your enterprise architecture.
And we've developed an entire roster of purpose-built digital teammates to do this.
We have?
Imagine you're acquiring a new company, and you have an impossible timeline for due diligence. That is where you deploy Alan, our AI legal summarizer. Alan takes incredibly dense legal contracts and autonomously processes them into actionable summaries.
Highlighting key liabilities. And then you have Susan.
Oh, Susan is great.
Susan is an AI agent dedicated entirely to PII redaction. She automatically scans those same incoming documents and permanently removes sensitive, personally identifiable information.
Which is huge for compliance.
Exactly. It ensures you maintain strict GDPR and HIPAA compliance before the data ever hits your main server.
And the interoperability is amazing. Once Susan secures the data, you bring in Mike. Mike is our quantitative proofreader. His entire job is to scan financial ledgers, catch arithmetic errors, and ensure consistency.
He doesn't sleep, and he doesn't miss a decimal point.
Nope. And finally, you have Karl. Karl is our advanced data insights agent. Instead of waiting a week for the analytics team to build a dashboard, executives can ask Karl complex queries in plain English.
And he just traverses the corporate databases and retrieves the answer instantly. What's fascinating here is that we aren't just deploying raw AI power.
Right.
We are deploying secure, compliant AI. Every single agent we at Kanerika build operates under the strict umbrella of ISO 27701, SOC2, and GDPR standards.
Bridging that gap between raw power and strict corporate governance.
Exactly. You gain the speed without ever compromising infrastructure integrity.
So knowing all the players on the field, from the foundational giants to the specialists to us at Kanerika, how does an organization actually choose the right provider?
The evaluation criteria really come down to 5 core pillars. First is domain expertise. Your partner needs to know the regulatory realities of your specific sector.
Right.
Second is integration capabilities. Can this system connect with your legacy mainframes without a massive rip and replace? Third, and perhaps most critical, is security and compliance.
Which we just touched on. If it's not compliant, it's a liability.
Exactly. Fourth is scalability. Can this framework scale seamlessly across a global enterprise? And finally, ethical transparency. Are the models auditable?
And when a deployment hits all 5 of those pillars, the payoff is tangible. I mean, we have the hard stats to back up this transformation.
The numbers are staggering.
Yeah, organizations are seeing a $1.2 million average annual cost savings in logistics operations alone, just by letting agents optimize routing autonomously.
And in fintech and health tech, we are seeing a 50% faster time to market for new products.
50%.
Yeah, because the regulatory compliance checks that used to take weeks are being completed by systems in minutes.
And in pharma, Agentic AI is driving a 30% reduction in project timelines. accelerating R&D by automating clinical data structuring.
And in retail and FMCG, companies are experiencing a 28% boost in customer retention. Proactive agents are resolving friction points before the customer even complains.
So what does this all mean for you? If you are listening to this, analyzing your own operations, the question is, do you actually need a massive foundational overhaul?
Probably not.
Right. Or do you just need a few highly targeted agents to fix specific bottlenecks? Maybe you just need a Susan to solve your GDPR headaches, or a Mike to eliminate manual errors in your auditing.
It is entirely about targeted, scalable impact. We have officially matured past the hype phase.
No more AI just writing funny poems.
Right. The technology is now delivering rigorous, measurable, bottom-line business value.
And this is exactly why we at Kanerika are so intensely focused on this space. Alongside our data agents, we also deploy operational agents like Jarvis.
Yes, Jarvis is our IT support agent. He doesn't just route tickets. He autonomously reads the issue, queries system logs, and pushes a solution to the user's machine.
And we also have Jennifer for natural voice-based scheduling across time zones. Every facet of an enterprise can be optimized.
Which, this raises an important question, one that goes beyond just software integration.
Okay, what is it?
If agentic AI can now autonomously plan, reason, write code, and execute multi-step workflows across your business, what happens to the human definition of work?
Oh, wow.
As we transition from being the manual creators of output to becoming the managers of brilliant, autonomous digital teammates, how will you redefine your own value in the workplace?
That is the ultimate question we're all going to have to answer as the calculator becomes the intern and the intern eventually becomes the manager. Something to think about. Thank you for joining us today on Kanerika's The Digital Shift. Stay curious and embrace the automation revolution.